Good afternoon, everyone. While I wait for presentation to load, my name is Richard Baldwin. I'm currently Acting Director of the Investment Division in UN Trade and Development, UNCTAD, based in Geneva. Our division publishes the annual World Investment Report. We provide countries with technical assistance on investment policy, investment promotion and facilitation. And we run the biennial World Investment Forum. And the last one was held in October last year in Abu Dhabi with 157 events and several ministerials. And that's where we really hope to push the topic of sustainable finance and investment further. I'll talk very briefly because I understand you have very little time right now. And I'll just give you a very quick introduction, some context behind all of the investment trends that you have been discussing, and then a few points on sustainable finance to follow. Next slide, please. Or should I do it myself? Or? It works. So very briefly, the trends. When we talk about investment in the World Investment Report, we look at greenfield investment projects, which is mostly industrial projects. We look at international project finance, which is mostly infrastructure. And of course, that's where you'll find much of the SDG investment. Well, we look at cross-border mergers and acquisitions, even though we're not very much interested in them because they don't help very much. And of course, the total is foreign direct investment, right? So these are the various different data points. This is a slide from last year's World Investment Report, but of course, that data by now is already old. We published in January our Global Investment Trends Monitor with some preliminary numbers for this year. And here what you see is that total foreign direct investment in the world is expected to be down in 2023 by about 18%. And you see that project numbers, both on the industry side and the infrastructure side, are also expected to be down. So 2023, not a good year. At least what we can see is that even in developing countries, you have a negative number for project finance, but at least you have a positive number there for some industrial investment. So there's always a glimmer of good news here and there, but overall, 2023 expected to be not a good year. We'll see the final data in the World Investment Report this year, which will come out 4th of June. So we have to wait another month for that. What is the context within which all of this takes place? This is a figure which actually in the Financing for Sustainable Development report you have, it's been replicated. This is an update of that figure. It's a long-term trend. And what you can see on this figure is a trend in FDI, which is the blue line. You see trade, which is the orange line on top, GDP, the green dotted line, and the gray bars are what we call global value chain trade, right? So that's trade in long supply chains, basically. And what we note here is that already from around 2010, the FDI line is not keeping up with trade and with GDP, as you would expect. So the growth in foreign direct investment worldwide started to slow down already more than a decade ago. And that's the context within which today we are still operating, right? We just published literally this week a report called Global Economic Fracturing and Shifting FDI Patterns. And that report really shows that, okay, you have a lot of developments currently going on with global trade tensions, with geopolitical tensions, with supply chain shocks and so forth. Companies and investors looking for supply chain resilience. So a lot of investment restructuring is taking place already. But what this chart really shows is that it's actually part of a much longer term slowdown in foreign direct investment. So I'm afraid not a very positive picture here today for you. What this report this week shows you is that for the least developed countries, this makes it much more difficult to enter at the bottom rungs of what we call the development ladder for investment, right? Because projects in that part of global investment today are much fewer, far fewer than they were a decade ago. And where all the projects are nowadays are on the right-hand side, on the top rung of that development ladder, which is all of the high-tech and high-tech services type investment projects. So for the poorer countries in the world, it makes it ever more difficult to attract investment projects that are relevant for their stage of investment. Moving on from there, a few words now. I'm not talking about the investment on the ground, which I've been talking about so far. I'm now talking about sources of finance, which is what we're looking at in global capital markets, sustainable finance, green bonds, social bonds, ETFs, looking to invest in sustainability, in sustainable projects. So there is a lot of growth there, right? Maybe some of the people around this room are familiar with the trends there or even operating that market. But in global capital markets, the interest in investing in green, investing in social, investing in sustainability is really there, right? Perhaps it's not growing as fast as we had hoped it would, but the market is huge and it's growing, right? In fact, if we could rely on the growth numbers on sustainable finance in global capital markets, we would be well on our way to at least culminate some of the gap in SDG financing. Unfortunately, that is not making it to projects on the ground, right? And I showed you the slide in general FDI earlier, but here what we're looking at in this picture here is investment in renewable energy. So just one part of SDG investment on the ground, right? Long-term trend, different regions. We're talking about Africa, developing Asia, Latin America, LDCs in general. And you see there the growth over more than a decade of investment in renewable energy in these regions, right? And on the right-hand side, you see the growth rates or the compound growth rates over that same period of time. And you see on the bottom there, the yellow part, the compound annual growth rate of investment in renewables in LDCs over the past decade has been 1% per year, right? While their GDP has grown by almost 7%, right? You would expect it at least to keep pace, but it's not doing that, right? Of course, we're UNCTAD, we're looking at international investment flows, right? So, I mean, it's not to be said that there is no investment at all in renewables in LDCs. There may be domestic investment, but especially LDCs and many of the developing countries in these other regions rely on international investment flows to get the job done. And this is really simply not happening. Even in some of the other regions, what you're seeing is that investment flows barely outpace GDP growth, and we need much more growth there. What that means is that, and you saw the growth that I projected in the previous slide on sustainable finance in global capital markets is really only translating, if I can exaggerate the point, in solar panels in California or in windmills in Europe. But it is not being channeled to a large enough extent to the global south, right? So that dichotomy between what's happening in financial market on sources of finance and what's happening on the ground in investment projects is really something we need to culminate. Now, this is from our SDG Investment Trends Monitor, where we have identified basically what we call SDG investment sectors, right? They do not match one-to-one the 17 goals, but they are concrete investment areas, right, that you can look at. Infrastructure, renewable energy, water and sanitation, agri-food systems, health and education. And the growth rates you see there on the right-hand side is the total growth in the number of investment projects, international investment projects in these sectors since the adoption of the SDGs. And you can see there it's really disappointing, right? This is by no means enough, right? This is why the UN Secretary General has said, I mean, we're really only at about 15% of SDGs that are on track. Well, with this little growth in investment, that's what happens, right? You see there even one sector where you have fewer projects today than you had in 2015, and the agri-food systems sector. So this is the critical point where we are now. We recalculated, in our World Investment Report 2015, we made the first calculation of the SDG investment gap. At the time, we said it was 2.5 trillion per year in developing countries alone, right? Last year was, of course, the half point of the 2030 agenda. And we did a recalculation, and we now think it is closer to 4 trillion. And you see here that more than 2 of that is just energy alone, right? Now, why is it so much more? Of course, we have never culminated that gap in the first place, so you accumulate more and more of it. But there are also additional needs in some areas because of the various crises that we have run into since the adoption of the SDGs. So I will abbreviate my presentation here because I think this is a good point to stop. I was going to say a few more things about investment policies. I can guarantee you that on the policy side, developing countries have made a lot of progress. They have adopted treaties, trying to make treaties, investment treaties, more sustainable development friendly. They have adopted investment policies that are almost always about attracting more investment, about investment facilitation, well in contrast to what's happening in developed markets where their investment policies are more and more restrictive. Developing countries continue to push investment. So it's not that the policy effort is not there, it is just that we need much more effort to tackle what is really the root cause of a lack of investment growth in the least developed countries, which is high risk ratings, right? High perceived risks, as a result, probably, or to a large extent, of very high debt levels and debt distress, right? Weaknesses in governance and weaknesses in institutions. Those are the core things that we need to tackle, and that's what UNCTAD is really trying to work on, both on the debt side and on the governance side. We are trying to really tackle these core problems because unfortunately investment policies, investment facilitation, all these elements are super helpful, but they are not doing the trick so far. So in our next World Investment Report, we'll be looking at one key tool that we see as very important for this purpose in developing countries, especially the least developed countries, which is digital government, which helps tackle some of these weaknesses in governance and institutions to try and give investors more confidence in putting their money in these lower developed countries. With that, I'll conclude and invite my colleague to make some remarks. Thank you.
Is this on? Yes. Thank you so much, Richard. I've put on my stopwatch because I know we're very tight on time. No, thank you very much. And in fact, this was a great segue when you were talking about enabling environments and weak policy environments. And as you've done such a great job at summarizing trends in such a small amount of time, I won't try to replicate that, but rather move from there and have maybe more the policy side of things for this, my very quick introductory remarks. So just before I do that, I work at UNDESA FSDO, so we have organized the fair, and we also produce this report called the Financing for Sustainable Development report that you all have on your tables. It's very bright. I don't think you can miss it. But the 2024 FSDR is our 9th report. It is a report on analyzing the implementation of the financing for development outcomes. Simply put, the SDGs, is money flowing towards them? To build this report, we draw on the expertise, analysis, and data of about 60 agencies and international institutions across the UN system, Bretton Woods institutions, who make up their interagency task force on financing for development. So UN Trade and Development is one of those agencies. This is also why I will not repeat everything that Richard has just said, because it would just be, using some of the UN Trade and Development data that then ends up in FSDR. It's a little bit of a summary and trying to draw really as well some key conclusions and policy conclusions that we can then bring in front of policymakers, and in instances such as the fourth Financing for Development conference that we'll have in July in 2025. So this year, allow me to just summarize a little bit of this policy side of things that we've had in FSDR. So we separate FSDR in different chapters that are all part of the financing for development topics. So debt, tax, domestic issues, private issues. So all of those are part of FSDR. And really some key trends have been highlighted that go across all these areas and that we realize really have an effect on all these areas. So we have called them kind of macro factors that really have impeded and been barriers for the financing for development these past few years, and that have led to some of the decline that Richard was just telling us about. So this includes a high cost of capital due to some of the risk premia that we see in some of the developing markets, particularly in countries in high debt distress, or with high risk ratings, and this leads to a strong disincentive for investors to shift towards renewable energy assets in those geographies. We still have some perceived macroeconomic risks that really play a major role, we find, in explaining this risk premia, that even more so than project-specific and micro risk, that if we really drill down, we realize that it was a lot about perceptions. So these macro factors, we really include them in a lot of the chapters, and we explain how they come from globalization trends. COVID-19 played a part, the geopolitical situation that we're having right now, but also, the debt distress that a lot of these countries find themselves in are largely conclusions and causes. So it's very much these big macro trends that have created this environment that unfortunately is impeding flows to go to certain markets. So some of them, and I'll try to conclude quickly, but other reasons we find are more endogenous to some of these fields. So Richard was mentioning the sustainable finance field. It also has some more endogenous issues that are linked to it, be it data, methodology issues that we then also address in the report. And then all of that leads us to have some policy conclusions. So we hope that the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development will be a chance to really course correct. We really find ourselves at a crossroads. So how do we close these financing gaps through some of the measures, including policy and an overhaul of the international architecture? How do we close some of the credibility gaps we still have? And then especially, how do we make sure that we really have, private finance working for the public good? So for that, we have different recommendations in the report, including how to improve some of the mechanism blended finance on currency risks, and really the architecture, the data architecture of sustainable finance, including, interoperability of the frameworks and working on big issues that I will not name, like double materiality. And, again, I encourage you all to read the report, because this is very short remarks, but just to say, hopefully everyone will find little nuggets here and there in the report that we can then bring on to this conference and hopefully, solve these issues together. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I now invite Thomas Burgandi, who's a very, very prominent investor and investment advisor from Riscura company, to come and take a seat. And we invite also the panelists from Suriname and Colombia to also come and sit at the stage for the Clean Energy and Agroenergy Investor Roundtable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. So as Glenn had mentioned, my name is Tom Burgandi, and I work for Riscura. Riscura is the largest emerging and frontier market domiciled investment consultant by assets under advisory. We advise on just shy of $200 billion. And the framework that Richard was speaking about is so true. And it's very hard, because our pension fund clients are actively investing in these emerging and developing markets. But what we really need to see is more international investors co-investing alongside our clients. So that's something that really want to encourage. So really kudos to UNCTAD, and I hope I can chat with you after this. So now I will begin this session. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, and thank you for attending this event on the Sustainable Development Goals Investment Fair. Today we're pleased to discuss one project ready for investment from Suriname and two projects ready for investment from Colombia. And I've been asked to go directly in to introduce First Secretary Varsha Ramertan. So I'll let you, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having us. As a country, Suriname, we are very honored to take part for the second time in the SDG Investment Fair. And in our view, achieving the SDGs can only be realized through collective effort and partnerships between the government, between the private sector and between key stakeholders. So without any further ado, it is our pleasure. It is our pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Mark Pauwe, who will give an overview of Suriname's project for this SDG Investment Fair. And we want to say that we look forward to interactions from your sides, and we hope that interested parties will be interested and we can attract your investment in our country, Suriname. Suriname is open for business. I would say, Mark Pauwe, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm not seeing my presentation yet. Wow, yeah. Well, the first slide already says it all. Okay, thank you so much. I'm very honored to represent Suriname for this SDG Investment Fair. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this project is about solar tomato greenhouses. At 5 sites, we're going to build solar fields, medium tech greenhouses, and tomato plant nurseries, daycare centers, and education centers. And in parallel, we will educate 2,500 Surinamese indigenous women. And red gold tomatoes really mean that tomatoes will mean independency for all these women. Next slide, please. So I'm Mark, I'm the entrepreneur for this project and later on the company. So I'm a Dutch IT and agri-tech entrepreneur, and for 15 years I've been connected with Suriname. And for instance, the past 3 years via WhatsApp and all kinds of social media, together with a couple of friends, we are motivating 100 farmers in the inlands of Suriname to double production in fruit and vegetables. So I really know what I'm talking about, I think. So the last government, the former government, didn't really have this trade and promotion website. So with some business relations, we set up Discover Suriname. And that led to the fact that we could, for instance, here you see Suriname rice, and here you see Suriname honey, and here you see Suriname soap, and here you see Suriname tea. So by creating that platform, we have managed that so much more Suriname entrepreneurs also in the inland just can have the infrastructure, have the means to really produce and export. Next slide, please. So with a lot of district chiefs from Suriname, I was in discussion, and they said, Mark, well, you're doing a good job, but already 2 times it was tried to set up large-scale tomato production. So they asked me, okay, if I can look into that. So the past 2 years, I've been thinking together with business relations, also here in the Netherlands with a lot of horticulture people. And now we've come up with a 4-year agri-tech tomato project where we have selected together with district chiefs 5 inland districts. And we are already promised 5 sites of 20 hectares where we can build up these solar tomato greenhouses and educate in parallel 2,500 women. Next slide, please. So the project location is Suriname. Suriname, so we have selected these 5 districts where mainly are indigenous people. And these districts, they have a hard connection with education and healthcare. Boats are main ways of transportation. A lot of infrastructure is missing. And in the 80s and the 90s of the last century, there was some production and there was also some knowledge, some modern knowledge. But after the independence, a lot of things vanished. But all these people are now open for change. They really say, Mark and other people, okay, help us with that new infrastructure, help us with renewable energies, help us with modern ways of growing and cultivating things. So this project is about introducing that infrastructure, that new technologies. It's also that global South challenge, what Mr. Bolwijn addressed. So Suriname really is at that first part of that investment ladder. Next slide, please. So what is the project? The project is a medium-tech greenhouse tomato project. You have low, medium, and high-tech greenhouses, but a lot of specialists advised me medium-tech will have 3 times as normal yield than open field, but it's affordable in terms of investment. So what are we going to do? We are going to acquire 100 land, which already has been kind of promised to us. And on these sites, we will build 5 fields of solar panels, 5 times a medium-tech greenhouse with water drip systems. We build also open field plant nurseries and grow fields, so that on the one side, we just make money by growing and cultivating tomatoes. And on the other side, the people we educate, the women we educate, really learn the various techniques. And also to make sure that no one has an argument not to come for work or not to join the project. We provide daycare, we provide medcare, we provide Wi-Fi and internet and fresh water. And you see, so if you do these projects in Suriname, you really touch all these SDG points. And after the project, well, we really take a lift off. So we will do 4 years of investments. In 4 years' time, we built these 5 greenhouse sites. And after these 4 years, then we start to produce. And then in 3 years' time, we pay back the investor. Next slide, please. So here you see, I just pick one. If we have 2,500 women learning and growing themselves and working in the greenhouse, they and their kids get so much fruits and vegetables, because next to that tomato stuff, we also will touch 20 cash crops. So just along with that Zero Hunger SDG, we will make a major step for thousands of families. Next slide, please. So there are direct social benefits. So we will make women more independent. They feel better. They will become more literate. Next slide, please. And so Suriname is an Amazon country. So 90% of the country is covered in Amazon forest. So you really have to do scalable, sustainable agriculture. So that's why it's an amazing gift that we now have this technology of solar PV fields, and we have greenhouses. And if we combine that, we can bring technology in delicate places where people, they also need to have work. They need to have income. They need to have food. So it's really great that we can save a lot of areas, a lot of forest. But also bring work, technology, and food and income. And also this on the side, this project will help in certain places the biodiversity with mangrove conservation and sea turtles and the sloth, etc. Next slide, please. So the first phase, well, we acquire the land, we set up the first small sizes of the plant nurseries, the grow fields. We will build the initial state of the tomato medium tech. So I've done it a couple of times before, but I also want to make it a learning situation for a lot of students. And it won't stay with 1 hectare. It of course will expand. And next to that, we will build these solar PV panel fields. And that will also expand. And everyone knows it has that multiplier effect, of course, bringing in these technologies. Next slide, please. So here you see it visualized. We are going to educate women in everything agri-tech. We're going to learn them about vertical farming, insect farming, hydroponics, aquaponics. And so we learn how you can save 80% of water, water drip systems, etc. And here you see the places. I've been often in these places. People are open and welcome, and they would find it amazing if this project would take a lift off. Next slide, please. So here you see, so I'm living in Netherlands next to the Wageningen University, and I have a lot of networks over there. But here you see the sciences. So medium tech greenhouses have a ×3 yield than open field. So, and that is what we go for. And the university also advises, Mark, use renewable energy sources. Use no diesel aggregates, but please use solar. Next slide, please. So the investment plan is we ask an investor to provide us with 30.7 million US dollar, and we will use it in 4 tranches. And so you saw the first phase. We will first build some infrastructure, logistics, greenhouse first sizes, and then we will gradually expand. And in 2029 we will already have over 10 million revenue. In a very consistent way. Next slide, please. So here you see the structure. So it's a 4-year investment. So the first 4 years, 2025, 26, 27, 28, we will use the trenches. We will build the greenhouse. But during that, we will also have some income, and I will tell you how we will manage that. And in building this infrastructure, the first 4 years, we will educate 2,500 women with a certain scheme. I know all about education. We are also building the primary digital school for Suriname and other countries. But after these 4 years, when everything is erected and educated, we will really start cultivating, growing, and making money with solar greenhouse tomatoes. And in these 3 years, we want the focus of paying back the investor. And after these 3 years, you see that the solar greenhouse company will make money on its own. Now, how does it make money already in these first 4 years? Well, in the inland districts of Suriname, most fruits and vegetables rot away. They are not harvested because also a lot of people don't know the value about harvesting, processing, logistics, packaging. So by learning these 2,500 women all about everything agritech, we will also learn them how you can already make money with all that fruit and vegetable that is lying around there or hanging around there. For instance, with mangoes. There are so many mangoes not used, and we can already make a lot of money with that just by collecting it, picking it up, processing it, packaging it, because we are building that logistics and packaging area anyway on our compound. Next slide, please. So the project status is that the project, is not already started up, but we have already done a lot of communication. We have done feasibility studies in the past, in 2007, 2010, and 2018. Already, people tried to set up greenhouses, not only for tomatoes, but with poor financing and poor management, these projects really didn't start. And now people say, Mark, it would be so great if we can have a lift off for this solar tomato greenhouse. So everyone is ready. We already have been promised land, and we bring from the Netherlands a lot of knowledge on these modern techniques. And then, you see what we are doing. We start to build, we start to educate, and then with crawl, walk, and run, we will expand the site, etc. And after 2028, we really want to think about upgrading the technology to high tech. Next slide, please. Okay, so with tomatoes, Suriname is an importing country. It eats 2 times more than it produces, so it really imports. But Suriname is also part of CARICOM, and CARICOM has agreed that if a country produces within CARICOM, it comes first with buying from it instead of from the US. So for years, Suriname is aiming to fulfill that position, to fulfill that role. And with tomatoes, it cannot only first do import replacement production, it can also for Barbados, Jamaica, and all the other island states provide so many tomatoes because everyone eats about 6 kilos of tomatoes every year. So enough mouth to feed. And we do it just with this technology, and this technology takes care of an extreme yield. Next slide, please. So I'm really proud and thankful that I can give this presentation for the country I'm really in love with. And yeah, if there's an investor or a couple of investors that really want to help Suriname as global South country to get off that first step of the ladder for investment, then you can, yeah, if you do this, then you will change the future of agriculture in Suriname, and you will see that infrastructure investments and educating women pays off. And we can provide with medium-tech tomato greenhouses and solar fields. We can provide an innovation and give 2,500 women a new future, and and also give the investor an honest profit. So we ask $30.7 million, and yeah, the ROE is 10%. Next slide, please. So it's not there yet already. The business plan has to be written, of course, but I would like to invite all of you to come and talk me, to come and see me, or I travel to you. It would be so great for Suriname to get to this next step, that we can really write this business plan and have a lift off for this project. Thank you so much. This was my presentation. I really want to thank the ambassador, everyone from Suriname that has supported me in making this presentation happening. I want to thank Kelly and all the others from the team of UNDESA. And I really hope there is an investor out there that says, wow, this is great. Let's start that journey in Suriname with solar tomato greenhouses at 5 sites. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark. Very, very insightful and inspirational project. So now we're going to move to our friends from Colombia, who are going to discuss 2 projects. And I'm going to pass the microphone over to Karen Schultz from Pro Colombia Investment Bureau.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think I'm talking back again since yesterday, but it is an honor for me to introduce our Secretary of Planning and Development. I should say development because she's very much into it, from the state called Atlántico. It is one of our 32 states of Colombia. So I would like to give you the word, and I will be interacting with Cecilia in order to give you a presentation of 2 important strategic clean energy projects in our country.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my English is not good. I am Cecilia Arango. I'm Secretary of Planning, the Department of Atlántico. And today we have 3 projects on one. It's a very important project for the energy, clean energy, and the future is very ambitious. See? Yes, very, very ambitious. But I think it's very interesting, and we need the studios, and okay, comencemos. Begin.
That's what I mean that let's start. So I don't know if you want me to put the okay. Okay, so okay, you would like me to be here? No. Okay, I mean, so we will be in this side now. Okay. Here it says, Atlántico, which, as I said before, is one of our 32 states of Colombia, and it is from Atlántico, from the Caribbean region of Colombia to the world.
Atlántico for the world, with the focus on sustainability. Is a plan de desarrollo?
Yeah, the National Development Plan of the state of Atlántico is embedded into these 4 areas.
This is the programmatic axis is all 4 axes, all focus on the sustainability, environment, social, productive, and government, because it is very important for the department careful the land.
Okay. Okay, I mean, so preserving our planet is really the challenge. And as we will see, I mean, in the next slide or map, you will see that basically our state of Atlántico is surrounded in, I mean, almost in an 80% surrounded by water. So, you know, I mean, that relying on on hydro sources, we are very vulnerable to climate change. So for that reason, we need to use other type of clean resources on our state in order to to move forward and to have a clean energy matrix.
This is the department. It's a little department in Colombia. It's only 0.29% of the old Colombia, but it's the Magdalena River, this is the Caribbean Sea, and the Dique channel, and only is very fragile.
Okay. So I mean, and you will see, I mean, in the next slide that is, for me, strategically located. I mean, it's also a good source for nearshoring platform. Okay, I mean, so although we have, and we are very rich in terms of natural resources, as we will see that we have really a very high potential on natural resources, it also happens, I cannot point there, but Cecilia is pointing there, that among of the other regions of Colombia, we have a high rate of multinational poverty. So we are rich in natural resources, but we do have a very social and high poverty index.
Dale otra vez.
Okay, I mean, so as you will see here, Atlántico department or state, as Cecilia mentioned, it is located in the most strategic place for international logistics and also for renewable energy, because it is, kind of a hub between the Central America, the Caribbean region, and also a platform to bridge to North America.
This is the project. It is 3 projects on one.
Okay, so it is an integrated sustainable development project. It is a multi-phase approach. So it is important here that we have a triad of 3 projects. So the projects are an offshore wind farm. The other one is a green hydrogen project, and it will be supplied by the production of renewable energy of offshore wind. And the third project is the infrastructure for the airport of Atlántico. So as you see, there are 3 projects that really, resembles a triad that is amplifying and powering the achievements of a sustainable development goal. So those are the 3 projects embedded in one. And the idea is we're trying to have a visionary local strategy, because it is a local initiative that will even powerful the nation Colombia and the Caribbean region, as we mentioned before. No, you say it, it's global impact from your
projects. Is a global impact and a leadership because it's very important for the clean energy.
Yeah, I mean, so here is for me, the Atlantic Department state rising as a global impact and leadership. And the idea is to become, as I said before, a clean energy hub due to the synergies that will be leveraged between the 3 projects. Okay, so the Atlántico Department, as we mentioned before, it is, it stands out in the region because it has a high radiation conditions and a high wind potential. Okay, so here you see that we have the highest percentage of winds at the Atlantic coast, and we also have a high solar radiation. So those, those convergence of natural resources make it to rise optimal conditions for having a high wind potential. We indeed have a 50 gigawatt potential rising at the state of Atlántico. And the idea is to interact it with the facilities of the airport. So we have a streamline between natural resources, clean energy, energy efficiency, and besides that, it converges with the infrastructure project for mobilizing different type of merchandise and projects. Okay, so the Atlantic offshore wind farm is harnessing, so we want to push clean energy renewables. There is something I want to say, and we didn't mention it when we saw the energy poverty index. And in Colombia, the energy poverty index is very attached to the demand of energy. What happens? That most of the population of the State Department belongs to status, 1, 2, and 3, which are in stratus, the poorest people. What happened? That they are paying very high tariff. And we want fair and justice tariffs for these people. So they are not able, to go further and to have productive businesses because they are paying almost $2 per kilowatt. So can you imagine paying $2 per kilowatt? And most of the population on the State Department, almost free now, $3 per kilowatt. So that's the idea, to have, clean energy and to democratize, to be more democratic in our energy portfolio.
Excellent. And I think on that note, because we need to finish up, just one final thought.
Okay. Yeah, just only, we want to go, finally to the economic impact and job creation. So as we said before, all of these 2 to 3 projects will be able, in a combined effect, to create more than 100,000 direct and indirect jobs, driving the economic growth, economic situation, economic kind of a structure. It will be the capex of $400 million dollars and an annual operation OPEX of $90 million. And so here we have in which is the capex consisting about, and we are now in the pre-feasibility stage of it. So these are very quickly, just to end, which are the impact on the SDG. It is approximately 7 SDGs we are impacting with these with this triad project, as we mentioned before. And as I said, funding and financing, we are looking for public-private partnerships and technological integration. It is that we are looking forward that this will raise more people to be embedded in technological integration. We need definitely, hydrogen is a new technology, but we need to work on transferring knowledge and technology for the people that are in these areas. A vision for the future, so we invite all of the people here, the investors, in order to work together in a public-private partnership. So it was really very fast. We were the last, but we think that these projects really have a big impact on SDGs.
Thank you so much. And please join me in thanking our colleagues from Colombia. Thank you so much.